than that because he killed people. And some of them were Norwegian and weren't German. So before we dive into that, Linda, you spoke, Jeffrey, your feelings about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's just the story that I did not know. I'm aware that there was tremendous complicity among the Norwegians um in helping
Uh-huh.
the the Nazis. And there were only a few thousand Jews, I think, that were living in Norway,
Yeah.
and many of them were deported. But like in the case of France, I think that um, it was the local police that did the roundups.
Yeah.
It wasn't the Nazis
Right.
themselves.
Yeah.
Um, but and it is, and I thought the way that it was presented with him telling a story and audience members then sometimes commenting. And particularly that one individual that was questioning
The girl.
about the girl about her own
Yeah.
ancestor who had been complicit. And that was a great way of kind of like, he's got his story, but then there are questions that came up about the morality of killing
Mhm.
essentially other
Yeah.
Norwegians. Uh,
That's why I programmed it because I've never seen a film. One, it's not even Jewish. It's not mentioned because it's
right,
Norwegian freedom they're fighting for.
right.
And Norwegian boys were being shipped off to Russia to, absorb some of the Russian fire, so German guys wouldn't have to die. Um, and I want to. You made me think of something. The complicity of the Norwegians. Um, you may not have caught it, but this guy Quisling, who was Prime Minister of Norway, his name has become synonymous with traitor. He was complicit, like who was Petain. General Petain was friendly with the Germans during the Nazi occupation of France, and it had the Vichy government. So they were bad guys, and he was Norwegian.
Right.
And the irony was that when they cart them off to kill them, um, our hero Gunner leans in and says, "I want you to know that the two guys who were driving you were imprisoned at Auschwitz or one of the camps." That was, I thought, a fitting uh, touch. So, yeah, it's we're surprised because we didn't know about these people. Yet at the same time, when you think about it, this global war, of course, sparked resistance fighters. And there's another film I want to bring to you. We had it a couple years ago, but I had it live at the Fine Arts Theater on Wilshire, now called the Lumiere. And you'll know this, Jeff, the Bilski brothers. It was a resistance group of Poles who lived in the woods in the forest and evaded the Nazi and sabotaged them. And it's a lovely documentary. There were men and women. There were romances. There were children born in the woods. And these were just ordinary people. In their daily lives, they could have been anything. And but the war brought out the best in some people and the worst in others. And it's just, we don't we think, and we think all the Nazis were born bad. No, they weren't. They were won over. Like all the cult victims with our history of cults in this country who were innocently seduced and co-opted. Their independent thinking was co-opted by a charismatic figure. Um, so there's a lot of innocence in bad people, and doesn't mean it excuses what they did. But also the good in people came out and they rallied around that because it was intolerable. I can't stand this. I have to do something about it. At cost to myself. And Gunner, of course, was pretty straight about that. In the beginning, he said, you might not come back. You might live to be 25. And he said, yeah, I thought about it. Linda?
Yeah, I also thought it focused on the cost on the individual.
Mhm.
what happens to someone who goes through the war. I did find a lot of his behaviors very stoical at the beginning, and then as the film progresses towards the end, he has that private conversation at the end with
Sure.
the individual who's questioning him. I thought that he let go of those emotions that he was holding in.
Okay.
And you think about all the killings and where he becomes an assassin and he's able to do that and go to sleep at night. But the cost of war, I mean, how it changes an individual, I thought
Yeah.
was very interesting in the
Well,
film.
this is the business about the five drawers. I open, the first three drawers all the time. I open the fourth drawer occasionally, and the fifth drawer I rarely open. And she is the fifth drawer because he does let his feelings out. Um, I'm going to save a little reveal about that for later. Um, but let me ask you about your perception of the character of Gunnar when he was a young man. He doesn't say a lot. He's kind of like the strong, silent type, but he's a great performer, and you read him as an actor, what he's saying and doing. You know what his concerns are. He's very clear about that. Was he convincing for you as well? He's kind of stoic. I mean, the stoic young man and the stoic older man, and basically, oh, and he's even interviewed. Remember that scene in the film where he goes to London and they say, "How do you do it?" They're suspicious that he's a spy. You're too
Yeah.
successful, you know. And he says, "I just plan a lot. I don't do anything but plan for a successful mission." And there's a certain cool-headedness that he had from the start. He can look at a Nazi officer and not reveal a thing when they're carding him. Um, and even when the clock is ticking and they're planning the explosives, uh, he's cool as a cucumber, and it's really, really remarkable the character. And you see, I don't know if there's a relationship between the coldness or the coolness of the old man to the stoicism of the young man who just he wasn't troubled by anything. I mean, he knew there were issues, but these Norwegians had to die. They were killing Norwegians, and that's it. And there's a lovely line in it where he tells the kids, it's very early. Um, he says, have you been in a war? No. I bet some of your parents have. And what happens when you're in a war, let me tell you, 18-year-olds, is that fine distinctions disappear. Right? Remember that? He says, no nuances. Everything becomes black and white because it's about survival. And that stuck with me because that's how you survive the morality of dealing with the morality of killing people. I mean, those Nazi guys, their mothers wept for them, just like any other mother would. And I'm not saying you have to protect their mothers and not kill those guys, but it's like our interconnections, travel out in the world. And he, it would get to be too much for him. That's why he didn't drink. He didn't womanize since the war, right? He said, I've been with five women, but not in that way anymore since I got recruited. And the other guys are still guys, and they pay for it. They're the ones who go down because they're just the bro. But for this guy, it's his art form, or his cause for being. And I think the Brits who were interviewing him didn't believe him. They gave him, you know, they stamped his papers, ready for training, but they'd never encountered anybody like this. I don't know if that's real. I didn't read his book, but it would be interesting now to see it. So the Quisling story. So Quisling was a turncoat, and that's why it's a synonym for being a traitor. A really curious name, isn't it? You're like Quisling. It sounds like a little goose or gosling, or whatever. But it's its own metaphor now. Annie, Linda, hi, and don't know who you are, but welcome. And Brad Ellison, always good to see you. And hello to Steve Greenberg too. Joel, do you want to chime in on what you thought about the film? You're muted.
I'm muting. Um, Well, I thought this was really well done, and it was like presented like this is a real person trying to explain his actions to a young group of students. And so the way it was presented, and then you saw what he had to do. But Helene and I were thinking about it. I don't know if it was with you, Jim, but we saw something similar in a different country about resistance recently. Was that with you?
What's the title? Do you
I
recall?
don't know. Can't
No.
remember. But it was a woman. One of the leaders of the resistance was a woman.
Still doesn't ring a bell.
Okay, but so and what I want to chime in is what you've been saying is in all the countries where the Nazis were taking over, there was resistance groups uh, that helped, let's say, hopefully helped turn the tide until we could get the real army in there.
Right, right.
And, uh, that I guess most people didn't know until it's been come to light in film recently. So I thought it was well done, and it almost was like real life. Here's this guy just saying, "Look, I had
Yeah.
to do it, and you don't understand. You weren't there."
Yeah. Let me poll everybody. Did you think that was a documentary or an actor when he was talking to the students? Or when did you discover that he was an actor?
I had a check. I looked up the film because I thought it might be him,
Yeah.
but then realized it was an actor.
Well, he had the nose. He had the same cadence of speech. He
Yeah.
didn't say a lot. There were a lot of pauses. They got that down pretty well. But I felt the weight of his deeds wore on him, and you felt it even when he wasn't talking directly about what he did. Um, yeah, Betty?
Yeah, I mean, I felt he was indeed very stoic, and he had that persona, in his actions. But I also thought of him as humane. First of all, right at the very outset of the movie where he was with his friend, the one who betrayed him, he was the one that was really concerned and felt passionately about the issue, whereas his friend, oh, it's not a big deal, they're going after communists. He
You're right.
really didn't seem to care that much. And so I think he just felt so passionately about this that he was able to shut all these other things out and do what he had to do. But he certainly said, when he was talking to the students, and he asked about, war, and he said, I hope none of you ever have to experience wars. And I also later I was curious about him, so I read a little bit about him, about his life, his real life. And apparently after the war, he was offered in both Norway and both Norway and the and Britain, Norway and Britain, he was offered jobs in intelligence, and he said, I don't want to do anything having to do with war again. So I think he did what he felt he had to do because he felt so passionately about it. But I did see him as a humane person.
Yeah. But the fulfillment didn't come during the war. It came by teaching the students about it. Why did we do this? And why did we endure such horrible acts that we committed? And he turns the tables on them. Yes, he said, I hope you never have to face war. But he says, what would you do for your freedom? And the answer is, like, what would you do if you were tortured? You can't tell until it's taken away or until you're tortured. So he lives in this netherworld. He understands too well the nuances of what he's doing, yet does it because he has to do something to stop this horrible world event that's going on. I really liked him a lot, and I thought the actor was great. I thought it was a documentary for the longest time. Maybe it's because I'm dumb, but they shot it and they framed it differently. They put a black banner around it so it looked like a different format. And one key was, they shot the girl and the guy who asked the question from the side, as though they couldn't go among these students because they were in the audience. So they had to shoot from the aisles. That's the implication of that camera placement. And there was one shooting up at him, from this, like below the stage, and one from the side, and a little bit of the background. But it was like, that says they couldn't move the cameras around because it was a documentary to me. So I bought it for a while, and then he's too good, and my wife thought, oh, I knew he was an actor from the day he opened his mouth first time. I said, why? Said, well, he was too actory. I said, what do you mean by that? And she couldn't answer. Brad, did you feel the same way? You're muted. So,
Yeah, no, I didn't. That was not something I dwelled on.
yeah. Yeah, you get what you go with it because the trope is complete. Here is an older guy talking about his war experiences to high school students. We've kind of heard it before, seen it before. We may have been in the audience at some time. So it's very familiar, and they treated it very realistically. But I want to say something about the girl at the end, because the whole film is structured around bringing it to her questions. She's the one who makes it pointed. And we can talk about that now or later. Maybe we should save it for later, but the structure of the film is to establish him as a guy he says in the beginning to his neighbor, it's not about communism, it's about freedom for us, Norwegians. And that kind of lays the groundwork for his character in the film. And who knows if that really happened, but maybe they made the scene up. It's about free speech, is what he says. And then he turns the table. The best instruction for students is to have them put themselves in a situation and ask, what would you do? So his first question is, how many of you feel secure now? And they all nod their heads, because this is the 90s, I suppose. We don't know exactly when it was, because he lectured for 40 years. And then he lowers the bomb. He said, well, it only took 800 soldiers to take over Oslo. So your freedom's pretty fragile if 800 soldiers can do that. Of course, what it says is that our democracy, excuse me for alluding to the US, is very fragile. And it doesn't take much to strip away the foundations. And, people weren't motivated. They were too fat and complacent. And they'd never had to deal with an invading force. I'm not sure if Norway was engaged in World War I or not. Probably not. They didn't have enough horses or cannons. So moving on, I'm just looking at my notes through the Bible. Oh, and they were naive, the resistance fighters. Before he went to get trained in London, they go off, with his teacher into the forest, and they're hiking through the snow with rifles, and they get ambushed. And he says while he's on the truck back, we were so unprepared. I promised I would never let that happen again. But it's an indication of how this was a ragtag bunch of resistors. They weren't military guys. They just knew what was happening to their country was wrong. And he gives his coat to the guy who gets shot next to him, tried to make him leave earlier. So that's another character, piece of silent character that happens there. The guy was probably dead, and he gave up his coat. Okay. But that's where he made his promise to always be prepared. And then we meet the team of resistance fighters. They're introduced to us. We see the fake passports, and we meet the woman at the bakery. The first assignment is going to the bank. That was kind of fun, wasn't it? Where the chairman of the bank is kind of, tosses them out. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to give you our plates for our currency. And then why does it turn on that guy? What does Gunnar say that makes him change his mind? Everybody remember? You going to share it, Brad?
Do you want your children to be speaking German?
German. Your grandchildren, yeah. And history will not look well upon you. If only more people would feel that way today. But yeah, and then he changes his mind. And then he gives them the test, have these words said. And I'm sure that's the way they communicated with the resistance fighters. excuse me, code names on the BBC at night. So that was kind of neat the way he turned that around. And again, it shows he could think on his feet. He had trouble talking and getting the request out. So, his usual silence, he was speechless for a while. And he finally gets it out, but he gets it out in such a way, so matter-of-factly, that he communicates right away, and he's sort of dismissed because of it right away. And then we begin to witness torture. And that scene is between Mathiasen and the commandant, who's sort of nameless. We see that women arranged for him to sleep in different apartments until they finally got ahead of him, and he slept in the forest for 2 hours each morning. But the girl at the bakery didn't identify any of the people. He tells his parents, and this is something else, he's not acting alone, he's endangering his parents. And, it's a silent meal. And then as he's leaving, he says, I'm involved in stuff. I just want you to know they may come after you. And what does the dad say? We all have our part to do. And sure enough, later on, the dad gets carted away. We don't know what happened to him. But it's like, okay, we'll dig up some dirt on your family and we'll put them in jail. It's typical third world country politics, political theater, but it's mean and nasty. So they go on mission. Mission one was get the plates. Oh no, mission one after that, after they get the plates, was blow up the building. And they do that. That was kind of fun. But you see, these missions get more serious and more serious as we approach the guts of the picture is, how do you feel about killing people, especially Norwegians? How could you do it? And that's a big, big question. And is it time yet? Oh, God, let me finish running through the film, and then I have a little presentation I want to make. And it's really the film. It's not just about the film. Then the friend who met a woman and gets caught strangles himself in jail because he's not going to rat on his comrades. And then he's introduced to mission 3, which is you got to kill these Norwegians because they're really bad. And he says, this is a tough one. Do you want somebody else to do it? And Gunnar says, no, I have to do it because if we won't do it, how can we ask them to do it? Which is the mark of a real leader. So that endears us to him as the audience. God, as I got into the movie and my notes get less legible. I love the way they recruited the woman in the apartment to let them use her place to hide. That was a really great scene because they approach her and, with her dog on the street. Do you live there? Oh, do you like the neighborhood? And you see, she's really paranoid about what are these guys after? Are they going to rob me, rape me? Or are they going to recruit me? Or what's going on? Are they Nazis? We don't know her political sentiments. And then it slowly turns. The other guy with the red hair, he begins asking all the heavy questions. Well, are there some people in your building you don't like? Oh, yeah, there are. and the next thing you know, they're in her apartment, But it's a slow conversion. It was interesting how I don't want to say they broke her down because we know from the result she was willing, but she was very self-protected because if they had been Nazi officers, she'd been killed, because they tricked her into saying, yeah, I'll help you kill that Nazi. So it was very brave what she did. And so that was one of the number 3 missions. Then we start cutting more often to the high school students. And the boy who stands up says, did you do any of this? Or how did you do? He evades that question. And actually, at some point, he says, well, did you do any of this? And Gunners turns away and he changes the subject, doesn't answer the question. And then later, very soon, the girl speaks up and says, she questions the ethics of killing people because she read the book thoroughly. She said, didn't you have any mercy for those people, the Germans or the Norwegians? And that's when he goes into it. He says, when somebody invades your country, there's no mercy because they're violating you. Well, what about nonviolence like Gandhi? And he said, well, nobody invaded Gandhi's country. They just took it over, and he knew that they didn't have the firepower to overcome the British government in India. But if he could sway the masses, and be an effective leader like Martin Luther King was so effective, that's the way to do it. And of course, King learned from Gandhi's playbook. And that's where he says, I believe, black and white, nuance, the finer points disappear. Everything becomes black and white when you're fighting for your life. Betty?
Yeah, I just at that point when she asked about Gandhi, I remember that he said Gandhi wasn't fighting Nazis, and I thought that was a really good line.
Yeah, he says when the enemy is inhumane, of course, it's a matter of interpretation if the British were inhumane, even though they taught the Indians great English. And it's a wonderful culture, and it makes me so angry when Indians are being expelled or not welcome into this country because they are among the smartest people in the world. I'm sorry, I'm racially profiling them, but whether they're Hindu or Muslim, and I think it's because of the multiple languages that they speak. It really, as from childhood on, it expands their minds so much. I put it crudely. When you learn that as one thing can be called 6 different things in 6 different languages, you realize, oh, things have more meaning than I just knew. It's like things mean different things to different people. And that's a revelation that gets woven into your DNA as you're growing up, I think. It makes you more worldly. And I regretted it being, I tried French and German twice and couldn't do it. So let's move on. So the vice is tightening as we go through the movie, and these intercuts with the students get more close to each other and more pointed. And she asks him, and he kind of dodges the question, and then she asks it again, and that's where the no mercy line comes in, and that whole discussion. And they stopped the killing. It wasn't revenge. Now she says, "Did you ever kill Norwegians on a mission, and how many?" He says, "Well, there were 28 dead. Some were guilty, and some were not." And that doesn't go anywhere. Was it worth it? She asks him, was it worth it? And I think this is a sort of, is leading up to this philosophical thing I'm going to bring up. He says, there's no answer to that. Was it worth it? How do you make a choice between who to kill? It's a terrible choice. At the same point, they're invading your country and brutalizing people and torturing them. So the nuance of that goes away. Of course, you couldn't justify German expansion by any means. But and then he says, what is freedom worth to you? And then we go on the third mission. And he's just denied that he ever knew any. Oh, she says, did you know my relative? And she names him. And he says, no, I don't know the name. My great-grandfather's brother. And he's lying. He's denying her. She is opening the 5th drawer and he says later on, I've managed to keep this buttoned up for all these years. And that's how I got through all these years of not examining my guilt, because he was close to me and I had him killed. I didn't know I wasn't close to any of the others. They were just Nazis or bosses or, collaborators whom I didn't know. So you see, when it comes home, that's when you're most vulnerable and subject to self-examination. and she forced him to do that. Now, he still denied it and turned away. And but you see in his performance, he's very pained after that question. And I think there's a close-up of his hands, rubbing his fingers in his hands. And that was before a particularly rough question she asked, or a denial that he had to put out there. Now, there's no music on in the film until the very end. There are actually 2, 3 music cues. And this is important. When they pick up his neighbor and they're taking him, he thinks back to get his reward in Oslo. There's a music cue there. And it's a very grim, ghost-like, it's like a funeral dirge. And I thought very effective, especially because we'd heard no music at all, ever, in the whole movie, whether for this on the student side or on the Nazi side. And that's, a director pointing to this is a really important event. Because it calls attention to it. Maybe you don't know it, but you feel it. And towards the end, it goes to black and white for the victors, their celebration. There's a shot of a young gunner who goes to black and white. And, he says, after they take Quisling away in the car, I managed not to think of that. And so that's my recap. But it's all built up to that last scene with the girl. Now, he sees her, he signs her book. It's so marked with Post-its, and nothing really happens. She says, thank you. She kind of forgives him. She doesn't expect anything more from him, finally, after pestering him twice from the floor and then once up close. And he goes to the reception for him with all the faculty, and he sees her in the hallway, and he goes out to talk with her. And his guide, his handler, is watching through the glass. So what do you think he's saying to her, or what is she saying to him? Anybody want to conjecture what that might have sounded like? I mean, when you saw it, and then she reaches up and touches, they hold hands. What do you think initiated that? And then they talk some more.
Yeah, I thought that he told her that what he did, that he did the killing.
He may have.
And I think that his confession, she understood everything that he had said about no mercy and the rights of the freedom. So I think it was kind of, an opening up of the heart from him, of how his emotions were. And I think she forgave him.
I think so too. Now, there's something you guys probably didn't notice. Do you watch this on your big screen television in your living room or on your computer at your desk? Anybody? Big screen? You got
Computer.
a big screen, Brad. Jeffrey, you probably
Big
do too.
screen.
Computer.
Yeah. Well, I first watched this on my laptop at my desk. You may not have noticed it, but when he's talking to her and they're holding hands, 2 tears fall from his face. One off his chin and the other from his nose. I had to go back to make sure, because when I watched it on the big screen this afternoon, I didn't see it. And I rewound and I went back to that moment. Sure enough, when he leans into her and there's the wall behind him, so you see the translucent drops fall from his face. I thought that was incredible. And of course, she got through to him and forced him to face however he told her. But I think you're right, Linda, that she forgave him for killing her great-grandfather's brother. I can't read it any other way. But what a wonderful way to summarize his journey. And of course, we learn later that he basically went to a hotel and fell asleep and died at age 92 or something. So in a way, that's saying he wasn't as troubled. But I think it did say at some point, I've done all that I had to do in the world, because it's been 40 years of teaching people about the price of freedom. All right, so let's go to my problem. It's not my problem, it's everybody's problem. There is a classic problem in philosophy, and we're not going to get egg-headed Nietzschean and Kantian and all that. But here's the problem. It's a hypothetical, and it has many forms. I do get to refer to my notes. It's called the trolley problem. You're on a trolley, a streetcar, and you're going downhill. And you notice up ahead there are 5 people tied to the tracks. And you notice that there's a spur you can switch the trolley over to, but there's only one person tied to those tracks. What do you do? And it's hard. I mean, what would you do? Think about it. You know, and you can get into it. There's a solution called the universalist utilitarianism, and that is most good for the most people.
Yeah.
So you'd sacrifice the guy, right? Some people say, well, I wouldn't do anything, therefore I'm innocent. Not doing anything is making a choice. Just like, okay, you didn't do anything to stop the Nazis or the Ku Klux Klan or the Jim Crow South. I didn't do it, but you allowed it to happen. And years ago, I showed a film, Gentleman's Agreement, with Gregory Peck, where he's a journalist and he goes underground pretending to be Jewish so he could write up a story about anti-Semitism. This, I think, is 1937. And at the end, he gives this monologue to his girlfriend, who he was engaged to. And I think she breaks it off because he told her he wasn't Jewish. You know, she was willing to marry him despite being Jewish, but the deception was too much. And he said, this is the problem with you people. It's the silent anti-Semitism that's as destructive as the physical action, the undercurrent. You know, this is what we mean by systemic racism. You know, okay, the banks can redline districts and not loan money to Black people, and we can put them in lesser schools and give them lesser work and make life really hard for them. But it's not my fault. And the lesson is, well, not doing anything is a choice as well. There are other lifeboat ethics. I mean, this problem is more interwoven into our lives. Jeff probably knows this. Okay, you're on a lifeboat, and how do you decide who's saved and who you throw overboard? And Alfred Hitchcock did a movie called Lifeboat about just this problem. And I highly recommend it. It's very taut. I mean, like tight, you know, and intense. There are lesser ones, the Heinz dilemma. A man must decide whether to steal a drug he cannot afford to save his wife, his dying wife, raising questions about the morality of theft versus the value of life. Well, it's always a balancing act, isn't it? And that's what these questions do. There's no answer to any of them, which is why none of us majored in philosophy. And then this applies to our movie. This is one of the top 5 theoreticals. It's called the doctrine of the double effect, a principle that examines whether it is permissible to cause harm as a side effect of pursuing a good end, such as in medical ethics when considering treatment options that may have harmful side effects, or when deciding who gets an organ transplant, which is a huge scandal. You know, our organ transplant system here is totally wrecked and compromised. Lots of corruption in it, and it's not fair. And it's been New York Times exposed to. Maybe something will be done about it. But yeah, when you're in the driver's seat or controlling the trolley, you have to make a decision. And what can guide you? Now, some people will say, well, what does it say in scripture? I don't do that. It's okay if you guys do. And there's another one called the fat man. It's a variation of the trolley problem. You know, PhDs in philosophy spend their time trying to think of things like this. It involves pushing a large man off a bridge to stop the trolley to save 5 others. So you cause direct harm to one person, and are you morally responsible for it, even though you save 5 others? Brad?
Well, I mean, if you believe in universals the way Immanuel Kant did, You have to deal with what he calls the categorical imperative. That you will, for example, you will not kill, you will not lie. And then you're dealt, you know, how do you then deal with if you have the opportunity to kill baby Hitler, would you? Should you? When you're told you shall not kill. When you're told you shall not lie, what do you do when you're hiding somebody and the Nazis come to the door and
It's
ask
happened a
you
lot.
if they're there? So these are just insolvable
Right.
questions, but but on the other hand, I think we have to live our lives according to these imperatives. And I think, in our day-to-day living, fortunately, we're not dealing with issues like that.
Well,
And that we shouldn't murder and that we shouldn't tell lies, I think is, um, you know, day-to-day living principles that we should follow, and I think they are universals.
they are. I think everybody knows that murder is. Look at all the religions and the laws of every country. Murder is not allowed. Of course, in severe Islamic countries, a father can murder his daughter if she's not a virgin. There are exceptions like that, rarely used, um, or if there's a disgrace, and it comes out of patriarchy. So you're right, but you bring up the question of what do we owe each other? Do we take the moral? There's there's apart from utilitarian, there's the deontology, and that is um, uh, taking moral responsibility. It's questions whether one is morally responsible for actions taken versus inactions. But I'm not skilled enough to deconstruct what deontology is. But ethics become very important. Following moral rules.
Ethics.
Yeah. So okay, morality. So where does morality come from? Why does an atheist not kill? Or a skeptic? What we're talking about some core human.
Well, Immanuel Kant would say it comes from our reason. Reason tells us not to do these things.
But how did he define reason? I don't know.
Well, our, our, the activity of our brains.
I think that's the process. I think we reach some embedded part of us that tells us what goodness really is and what we owe other people. And, that's why the social isolation of the web, especially for young people, is very destructive because they don't know how to be with each other face to face as much as we did when you have to go out and play with somebody. And they're real skills, social skills that are lost. And, the less connected you feel to your community, the more you're going to allow them to be abused or carried off in an ice vehicle. We get worn down by the machinations of society. So, this guy, Gunnar, had that moral core and moral reasoning, although he just said, I'm doing it to keep my country free. It's very simple. Yet he committed all these crimes against morality. I agree, there is no answer to these dilemmas. But the point is they spawn so many pages of argument and articles batting it around. Moral absolutism versus relativism. Are moral truths are absolute or are they context dependent? And they found in research that how you pose a dilemma will change the outcome by changing certain variables. And if I can go to that, I mean, there are two dilemma types. There's the trolley problem or the footbridge problem. I didn't go that. And then there are three frames they call reacting to it, positive, neutral, or negative. And they instead of 5, they had some were told 5 people and some were told 15. But the main effects of dilemma type, frame, and number of saved workers were all significant. The interaction of dilemma type and number of saved workers, and the interaction of the 3 independent factors, positive, neutral, or negative, mean uh, uh, results indicated that moral judgment is affected by how you pose the problem, how you frame the problem. Specifically, people were more inclined to utilitarianism in the positive or neutral frame of mind, but more inclined to intuitionism. In other words, what's your moral feeling about it in the negative frame? Furthermore, this effect can be moderated by the dilemma type and number of saved lives. Implications of a result are discussed, and I didn't take it any further. But you see where this takes us into a territory where everything is relative. Context is everything. Now, what Gunnar is saying in the movie is that when they invade your country and take your neighbors away, or they torture your friends and kill them, it's like, I don't need nuance. That's just outright bad. And I don't want it to happen to anybody else, even if I don't know them. So that's that civic spirit that you didn't know you had. So I wanted to share that with you because the film brought that out for me. He has a choice. Did he take the assignment to kill the Norwegians along with the Nazis? Yes. Why? Because he says, if I don't do it as a leader, then my men won't do it. It's not fair. And this reminded me of in classical Eastern Indian households, the young daughter of the house is given to the servants, the female servants who clean and run the kitchen, to learn how to do all their chores so that when she's a head of a household, she knows what she's asking them to do intimately. So again, it's this personalization of other people's situations that that we're talking about here, that we can't lose sight of that. And sometimes you have a social institution like a wealthy woman teaching her wealthy daughter to hang out with these impoverished people they don't pay very much to cook and clean and sew and the motherly chores that mom has no time to do, I guess. I don't know how long that lasts, but they can't ask a servant to do anything they couldn't do themselves. It's kind of weird, isn't it? Usually you ask somebody to do something you can't do for yourself. But to earn your privilege, you have to understand what the ask means of the other person. So it's very empathetic oriented. All right, so that's enough philosophy for my feeble course, but this film is very rich for that. And there is no answer. And he didn't have an answer. And he even said that at times. But for him, he could do it because he had that 5th drawer. He could rationalize anything from the first 3 drawers. And the harder ones were the 4th drawer, which means maybe killing only Nazis. But the 5th drawer was killing a neighbor. And the film is built around this pyramid structure that takes us to that conclusion, that challenge, and doesn't answer it, can't answer it because there is no answer, at least to this filmmaker's mind or to Gunnar. Anybody want to chime in on that? Jeffrey, is this what you teach your students?
Actually, of course. I mean, when you're dealing with the Holocaust, all of these issues come up. We read a speech by who the former head of the dean of Yale Law School, and it's called Choices. He gave a speech to the lawyers at graduation, and he gives examples of like good people sometimes make bad choices. And sometimes bad people make good choices. And then he gives an example of this farmer who rescued Nazis and Allied forces. And his answer, why did you do it? He says, well, they all have a mother.
Mm.
And that's reason enough.
It humanizes them.
Do it.
Yeah.
So yes, all of these issues of morality and ethics.
So they're not hard and fast. because you have to be flexible to really be moral.
Well,
That's it. Yeah.
I'm very suspicious about this flexibility issue. I mean, let's talk about slavery, for example. Slavery, our forefathers were slaveholders here in this country. Um, and it was a common practice at the time. Does that make it morally right? No. I think slavery is immoral no matter when. That is a universal. And of course, biblically, our ancestors were slaveholders as well.
Yeah.
It doesn't make it right. Now, it doesn't, these people also had very positive things about them, but I tend to believe in universals, and I think going down this moral relativism slope is pretty dangerous. But getting back to the movie, I wanted to ask you about the scene with the king of
Oh,
Norway.
the luncheon, yeah.
Britain.
Yeah, do you have any comments about that? I wasn't quite sure what to make of that, how I was supposed to react to
Well,
that.
I think Gunnar had become a celebrity, at least in the inner circles of the government. And he was summoned to London, where the king was living in exile, to be encouraged and thanked by the highest, most respected man in the country. He calls him Your Honor. He bows when he meets him. Um, it must have actually happened, and it says how important what he was doing. It wasn't some maverick division of the army, but he had the king's endorsement. I don't know what else to make of it. And they were left alone together by the military guy. So the king just wanted to get it off his chest because he wanted more guys like this. His country was being devastated, or the co-opted by the Nazis. Ruined. The culture was being destroyed. I don't know more than that, Brad. The book makes me want to read the book, but Betty.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that although he did, kill a lot of people and blew up a lot of places, he also saved people in that one scene where they were going to send a lot of the young men, I don't remember how many, to be fodder for,
Yeah.
and to be killed. They were going to put them in the front lines. And so he was involved in blowing up that building, and it saved all those men from, being killed in the war. But he also told all the people that were there, he said, this place is going to be blown up. He could have just blown it up. Those were all Nazis that were working there.
That building, it was the communication center, I believe. That's where they put a box of explosives.
Yeah, so he could have just set it up. He put himself at greater risk by telling them, but he said, you need to get out of here. This place is going to be blown up. So he saved those people where he could, and he saved all the people that were going to be, that were going to be killed because they were going to be put right in the front lines. And the other thing was the situation that, apparently, seemed to cause him the greatest guilt, having to kill his childhood friend. His friend had betrayed him to the Nazis. So, his friend was going to have him killed. So
well, that's true. Gunnar does have a line. He probably did it for the reward money because remember he was out of a job and there was some problem with his family. I guess and if you read the text at the end, throughout his life after the war, he went out of his way to say that the rest of Solheim's, this is his neighbor's family, were not anti-communists. They were really good Norwegians. They were anti-Nazi. And so that must be after this girl cornered him and nailed him on it. If that really happened, I don't know. Okay, well, Arlene, you've been kind of quiet.
Yeah, I really like the movie very much, and it's just interesting to hear what everybody's saying because I agree with them.
Mhm. Yeah, it's one of those films that really gets to you because it cuts to the fundamental of what morality is, you know,
Right.
and that's the films I kind of look for that
It
have
was a good film.
good. Yeah. So let's talk about Song of Names again. Nobody hears Arlene, you were with us then. Maybe you didn't see it that week.
Oh, what? What?
The
Oh,
film
what?
called Song of Names, The Song of Names. But
Oh, I don't remember it.
yeah, I'm kind of concerned because people who have seen it again will want something new, although it's been a couple of years since I saw it and I thought it was still great. So I could do it again, but I kind of gun shy about that. There is a lot of good stuff coming up. And what about that documentary about the Bilski gang? I mean, there was a starring Daniel Craig called Defiance. There was a Hollywood feature about it, but there's a documentary told by people who were there. And I don't know. I mean, it's astonishing how they lived and what they did. So I'll look at it again if you'd be open to it. It was a
You
very
had mentioned some good films the last time we met that you were going to put on the schedule, but I don't remember what they, I don't have it in front of me.
okay. Well, I'm still, nobody has seen 8.5. And Fern told me, "Oh no, don't show it to our group. They won't like it." I don't know. I
I
don't.
still want to see it.
Well, it's about a film director in Italy who has creative block, and he doesn't know how to write his next film. So, typical of Fellini or Borges, he decides to write a film about a director with writer's block, and he brings in all the women. It's a lot the women in his life, and the themes of mystery and magic and art are woven throughout it all. It's gorgeously shot in black and white. Ennio Morricone did the music. It's over 2 hours, and it's a seminal film, and in so many ways. I've been watching old films for some gems that I think. So, Arlene, does that sound familiar?
I think I might have seen 8.5. I wasn't too impressed with it years ago.
Yeah. Well,
Um, you mentioned a couple of very good films that you were going to check out, and you were going to look into it for us to see. And some of them sounded really good.
well, there are lots of really good films. Uh, Current films.
I'm not sure. They might have been. I wrote it down somewhere, but I don't think I have.
Well, email me with them, and I'll follow back on it. What one thing, and again, I did have a complaint that I wasn't showing enough Jewish value films. I think this one is very much a Jewish value film because it's about morality. Oh yeah, I wanted to ask Brad and Jeff. So it's I was in Rabbi David's Torah study class for 5 years, and he really opened up my eyes to what the Torah is about. And so, how do you treat other people? It's about what we owe each other. Yes, there's a lot of God talk, but it's this metaphor for the way to live, and seen through that lens, and through the lens of a cultural nuance, of various stories, because we peeled back the layers of all of the biblical stories and got tremendous meaning out. Brad, you were in the class, and it was like I try and find films that will connect with my sense of where he was directing us. And if you look back at the 160 films we've seen, that's I see the mark on them. Let me run some by you now. Yeah, Brad.
Wow. 160 films. Wow.
Yeah. How about the 700 I watched to get those 160?
I'm not recommending this, but Jim, my grandson's taking a film class and he had to watch the old movie Scarface.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you've seen that recently,
Yeah.
but there is a character in there who anticipates Trump. I mean, it's really, really creepy.
Well, there are others like that. Now I didn't realize it because it was so long ago. But there's Last Hurrah, and there's Face in the Crowd with Andy Griffith, which we discussed. You know, uh, uh, Face in the Crowd was directed by Jules Dassin, I think. And there are other warnings of autocrats. Now, there's a new film out. I'll try and get it for us called Happy End, and it's not Happy. It's yeah, Happyend, one word. And it's about a futuristic society where will is taken away from people, or I forget. It's a Japanese film. Very good reviews on that. Past Lives has a little bit of Jewish content. It's about a Japanese woman who's married to a Jewish man in New York, and the boy she grew up with, and they sort of had as teens, preteens, they had something with each other. And he comes back, and it causes her to rethink a relationship with this man. And she's not tempted by the other guy, but she has to tell him, no, I have another life now. I thought it was very quaint.
Sounds good.
September 5th is about the day the Israeli Olympics people were shot by a terrorist group, Mannheim Steamroller. And it's told from the point of view of the CBS film crew. It's a thriller and a nail biter, even though you know how it's going to turn out. And it's so well made. I should probably do that.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it's really good. It's taut. And it's all told through the point of view of these people in the control room. And there's one guy who smuggles film in and out of the campus once the siege is underway. Then there's a new documentary that's getting a lot of good notices called Riefenstahl, about Leni Riefenstahl, who was Hitler's. Goebbels was the media marketing guy, but she was an artist and a filmmaker. She did Olympiad and Triumph of the Will, which were celebratory for the Nazi regime and Hitler. And to this day, she's still alive. She denies that she was doing Hitler's bidding. She said, I was an artist creating art. And it's like, it's nauseating, but you have to see it because it's an example of the lies people tell themselves. Riefenstahl, and it's on Amazon. And that just came on Amazon. The Apartment with Jack Lemmon, boy, that's a great movie. Doctor Strangelove, 8.5. Rules of the Game, you should see. Anybody seen Renoir? Yeah, Brad, I'm sure. But Rules of the Game is a seminal film as well. And what's the other one? Rules of the Game and
Sounds good.
yeah.
What's
These are
Rules
black
of the
and white
Game
sound
about?
films from France before World War II, but they're so humane and so smart.
What's Rules of the Game about?
Brad, can you help me?
Well, it's a World War I movie. I don't
Yeah.
really remember
Yeah.
it.
Okay, then
There's a hysterical French comedy with the actor Louis de Funès, and it's called The Mad Adventures of Rabbi Jacob. I don't know if
I did
you've
see that.
seen
That's recent.
No,
No,
it's
an
an
old one?
old movie,
Okay,
but it is, slapstick on steroids, and it is absolutely hysterical.
Let's
all
see
right.
that.
Yeah, we need some cheering up. And there's something else. A Jewish artist, Emil Hirsch, uh, uh, plays an artist called Bao during World War II. It's not available online yet, but it's very good notices. And reading Lolita in Tehran, I'm sure you're going to really love that, but it's not available. So same as nobody against Mr. Nobody Against Putin is about how they brainwash. It's a documentary, and it's about how they brainwash students in Russia. There's
That
another
sounds really interesting.
There's another film that David Hare wrote and Mike Nichols directed, 1997, called Designated Mourner. It's about a skeptic wanders into a Shiva prayer meeting in Canada. And that's all I know, but I gotta see it with that kind of talent going into it. Oh, and here's something, the Meyerowitz stories. Noah Baumgarten did this a couple years ago. It's got um, uh, 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 Dustin Hoffman, a whole bunch of people, and it's about a neurotic Jewish family in Manhattan. And the first hour is like, oh my God, I'm so sick of these people. And then it gets really, then it gets really good, and then it gets into real family drama.
What's
And
it called?
the Meyerowitz stories it's on Netflix. Ben Stiller is in it as one of them, and what's his name? The guy who was in I don't like him, not Gardner, the Gem Story guy, the Jewish guy who plays a jeweler. And it's a huge cast.
Adam Sandler.
Adam Sandler, right, is in it, and it's I don't know. I think you'll like it. It's not serious until the very end. Dustin Hoffman gets sick, and his imminent death brings out family trauma, or drama, I should say, because nobody was abused. Although if you ask them, they'd say yes. Because Dad was a real. Oh, Emma Thompson's in it as the second wife.
Okay, let's watch that.
Yeah. Okay.
What's it called?
The Meyerowitz stories, but it's only one film. It's
Maybe
not
we
a
should
series.
see that.
Meyerowitz. That's easy. There's a lot of fun to it, but Ben Stiller has a scene. They managed to mount Hoffman plays a sculptor who's seen better days, and he taught at Bard College for 30 years. And there's a retrospective where his work is included, and he dies, but the sons appear and sort of have it out on the lawn of the gallery. And they also speak inside the gallery for the dad. Oh, Judd Hirsch plays Dad's best friend from way back, but he made it, and Judd Hirsch made it as a sculptor. And Hoffman's hilarious, very bitter, and all kinds of critical things, cultural criticisms of other people's work. So yeah, okay, that gives me something to chew on. Then there's The World Will Tremble, about the two guys who escaped from Chelmno. And it's a terrific film. It's a three-hanky movie. And it's about, these guys got the word out about the first concentration camp, the first killings. And the director was related to somebody close to the story. So he went to Warsaw and went to the archives. And yeah, Brad.
Yeah, we're going.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Great.
contributing.
Great choice.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Good. I'm glad you did.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw The World Will Tremble. I've seen that. And
Yeah. Do you think it'd be good to program?
very historically accurate. They worked with a lot of historians in doing it. It's I don't know.
It's very dark.
It's
You know,
very dark.
And the performances are good, and it's, well shot.
I'm curious. There's two films. Nuremberg is coming out, I
Coming
guess.
out, yeah.
And the other one is the new film about Elie Wiesel.
Out already.
Souls on Fire.
Souls on Fire, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, Nuremberg is just on its press tour now. It's got Russell Crowe as the Nazi, and some of the good actors as the psychiatrist. It's like a dueling banjos kind of film. But I want to see that. My wife did the legal contract on that, but just don't remember anything about it. It was so long ago they started working on it. It was still practicing. And then there's a film called Shtetl, Shttl, that's on my radar. I don't know why. And finally, there's Still Alice. Now, this is a pretty heavyweight movie. It's about early onset Alzheimer's. And it's about the effects on her and her family and how she deals with it, how they deal with it. It's a terrific movie.
I saw that a long time ago. It was
Yeah.
very good.
So,
I'm going to say goodnight as well.
okay. Yeah, we're past 9 o'clock.
I
Almost
look
9.
forward to hearing the choice.
Oh, okay. Well, you know, there are many
Yeah.
weeks ahead. It's just what's going to be next is the issue.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for a good
Do you
discussion.
know when the next one will be?
What did I reserve? November. I think it's November 20th. Oh, yeah. I think it's November 20th, week before Thanksgiving. Because the 6th and the 13th were taken.
Okay, so November 20th, the week before Thanksgiving.
Yeah. So you'll be dressing your turkey, I know, early, but
Yeah.
take out 2 hours to see the movie and an hour and a half to talk about it.
Thank you so much.
thank
It was great as always. So yeah,
Thank
this one, you know, the discussions are always good, but this one had you know, some additional issues that were very interesting. I
Uh-huh.
like the philosophical questions you brought in. So
Yeah, I mean, that's what it made me
moral
think of.
issues.
So, you know, I was kind of worried, you know, will people like it? But people engaged with that. So I'll try and
Yeah,
do it again when it's
I
relevant.
thought it was excellent.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So
Okay.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah,
Oh, Joel, thanks for coming. Steve Greenberg, let me hear from you sometime. And Arlene, thank you.
yeah.
And
Thank
we'll see
you.
next
I
month.
enjoyed that.